to interdimensional travel.
I didn't. I did.
Okay, I'll give you that last one.
What? I mean, I'll take it, but...
Hey, Morty.
A cartoon about a drunk scientist and his anxious grandson started as a copyright violation. A deliberate, legally dangerous, gleefully offensive copyright violation, made specifically to annoy the lawyers of a major Hollywood studio. That is the actual origin of one of the most critically acclaimed animated series in television history, and it only gets stranger from there. Rick and Morty has spent over a decade doing something almost no animated show manages. It makes you laugh out loud, makes you genuinely uncomfortable, and occasionally makes you feel something real, all in the same 22 minutes. It has collapsed the line between cult hit and mainstream phenomenon so completely that a throwaway joke about a discontinued dipping sauce once caused a riot at McDonald's locations across the United States. A real riot. Police were called. Today, we're going behind the scenes of one of the most fascinating shows Adult Swim has ever produced. 12 hidden details, spanning the show's chaotic origin, the scientific theories that actually shaped its writing, the secret crossover hidden across 2 separate shows, the co-creators' dramatic falling out, and the question nobody has answered yet. What exactly is this show really about? Stay until number 1. That one reframes everything. Let's count it down. 12. It started as a Back to the Future hate letter. The real origin story of Rick and Morty is not the one most people tell, and it's considerably more chaotic than the official version suggests. Justin Roiland had been making animated short films for Channel 101, a monthly short film festival in Los Angeles co-founded by Dan Harmon, where audience members voted on which pilots continued as series. One of Roiland's most successful Channel 101 creations was a show called House of Cosbys, in which most characters were clones of Bill Cosby. It ran for 5 episodes before a cease and desist letter from Cosby's lawyers shut it down. Bitter and feeling creatively caged, Roiland had channeled his frustration into a different short film. This one designed explicitly to test the limits of what copyright lawyers could tolerate. The result was the real animated adventures of Doc and Marty, a grotesque, crude, deeply offensive parody of Back to the Future, featuring obvious stand-ins for Doc Brown and Marty McFly, animated with deliberate shoddiness and stuffed with content that would make any studio's legal team reach for their phones. It was made, by Roiland's own description, specifically to be as legally irritating as possible to the people who owned Back to the Future. The characters spoke in extended improvised rants. The humor was intentionally juvenile. The whole thing ran a few minutes and had no real story. And Dan Harmon loved it. When Adult Swim later approached Harmon about creating a series, he immediately thought of Roiland and that short. They stripped out the most legally dangerous Back to the Future elements, aged the relationship between the characters from friends to grandfather and grandson, and replaced Doc's scientific genius with something darker and more alcoholic. The result was Rick and Morty. One of the most celebrated animated series of the century was born from a deliberate act of creative spite against a studio's legal department. That is not a metaphor. That is exactly what happened.
I was also late because of my drinking and mentioned it to 0 applause.
Rick Sanchez.
11. The pilot was written in 6 hours. When Roiland and Harmon sold their pitch to Adult Swim development executive Nick Weidenfeld, they did not take a week to write the pilot. They did not retreat to a cabin with index cards and a whiteboard. They wrote it the same day they sold it. 6 hours. In Dan Harmon's largely unfurnished community office on the Paramount Pictures lot, Harmon was still actively running the NBC sitcom Community at the time, a show with its own chaotic production history, and both men knew their window was narrow, so they sat down and wrote. The urgency wasn't just logistical. Roiland had created 3 failed animated pilots for Fox before this and was, by his own account, burned out on the development process, tired of pitching things into a void and watching them disappear. He was resistant to notes. He was resistant to interference. The fastest way to avoid the production machinery grinding his idea into something unrecognizable was to have the thing already written before the machinery could get its hands on it. 6 hours produced a pilot script for a show that would run for more than a decade and become one of the defining animated series of its era. Harmon later described it as one of those creative sessions where everything just clicked, where the characters arrived fully formed and the dynamic was immediately clear. The best pilots often don't take the longest. They take the right conversation at the right moment between the right 2 people.
Can't risk Citadel secrets falling into the Federation's hands. We'll dispatch SEAL Team Ricks immediately.
Rick's burps are completely deliberate and require 2 takes. Of all the things that could become the most recognizable quirk of a major animated character, few people would have predicted it would be belching. And yet here we are. Rick Sanchez burps mid-sentence, frequently, unexpectedly, and in a way that feels almost like a verbal tic, as though his body can't contain whatever he's thinking about long enough for it to come out in clean language. For viewers, it's either an endearing character detail or an irritating affectation, and it genuinely seems to divide opinion. Here's the thing. It's neither random nor accidental. Roiland, who voiced both Rick and Morty for the show's first 6 seasons, had a specific method. He would read through an entire scene once, marking in the script exactly where he wanted burps to appear. Then he would go back and record the scene again, this time inserting actual belches at the marked positions, drinking water or beer as needed to produce them on command. 2 complete passes. Every single scene. For every episode across 6 seasons. The burps that sound like a character trait are actually the result of careful placement decisions made before recording, then physically executed during a second recording pass. What reads as chaotic improv is, underneath, a planned performance choice executed with considerable physical commitment. And here is the detail that makes this genuinely interesting rather than just gross. Roiland has said the burps serve a specific narrative function. They interrupt the flow of Rick's speeches in a way that undercuts his grandiosity. The universe's smartest man can't even finish a sentence without his body rebelling against him. The belch is the physical manifestation of the character's self-destructive relationship with his own intelligence. Gross, yes, but also, on reflection, kind of profound.
Look, I love you, Morty, but we both know you're not as fast as the other kids and…
9. The theme song was written for a completely different show. The Rick and Morty theme, that immediately recognizable, building, slightly eerie piece of music that opens every episode, was not written for Rick and Morty. It wasn't even written for Adult Swim. Composer Ryan Elder had written the theme for a different Justin Roiland project, a rejected Cartoon Network pilot titled Dog World, a show set in a world where intelligent dogs had enslaved humanity. Roiland had been developing Dog World seriously. There was actual momentum behind it, actual planning, before the project stalled and he shifted his attention to what would become Rick and Morty. When it came time to develop Rick and Morty's sound, Roiland already knew what he wanted. He told Elder he was a fan of the science fiction television series Farscape and Doctor Who, and that he wanted to combine the thematic DNA of both shows' opening music into something new. Elder's previous work on Dog World had already been moving in a direction that fit this brief. The result, adapted and refined from that earlier project, became the Rick and Morty theme. There's a further layer to this. Much of the creative DNA from Dog World was repurposed directly into Rick and Morty's second episode, Lawnmower Dog. The concept of super-intelligent dogs and the dynamics of a human-dog power reversal, material Roiland had developed for an entirely separate show, found a home in one of the earliest episodes of the series that eventually absorbed everything else he'd been working on. A failed pilot about enslaved humans, a recycled theme, a second episode built from leftover ideas. Rick and Morty was assembled from the wreckage of everything else Roiland had tried to build and hadn't quite finished.
Morty, this is perfect. After a little scary coitus, they should be fast asleep, and then we'll incept him.
8. The hidden crossover that required a year of planning. Alex Hirsch, creator of the Disney Channel animated series Gravity Falls, and Justin Roiland are close friends. They are also, it turns out, the kind of friends who will spend over a year coordinating an elaborate hidden crossover between their 2 completely unrelated shows, purely for the satisfaction of attentive viewers who notice it. The most technically impressive version of this crossover required genuine advanced planning across production timelines. In the Rick and Morty episode, Close Rick Counters of the Rick Kind, a series of random seeming objects appear briefly in the background of a scene. Among them are several items that appear, at first glance, to be meaningless visual noise. A full year later, those same items appeared in a Gravity Falls episode titled Society of the Blind Eye, as objects that had been lost or stolen within that show's universe. Think about what that coordination required. The Rick and Morty production team knew over a year in advance what Gravity Falls would be doing in a specific episode. They placed specific objects in their own episode that would only make sense retroactively after an episode of a different show on a different network aired 12 months later. Viewers who watched both shows carefully enough and who were attentive enough across a year of television would notice the connection. Nobody was required to notice. There was no announcement, no press release. It was simply there for whoever was paying attention. The Gravity Falls Journal 3, a companion book to the series, also contains graffiti from Rick, extending the crossover into physical merchandise. 2 friends, 2 shows, 1 very long-running inside joke for viewers who were watching closely enough. If you enjoy going this deep on the shows that actually shaped modern pop culture, subscribe. This is what we do every week.
I don't like being told where to go and what to do. I consider it a violation. Did you get those seeds all the way up your butt?
7. A single joke about dipping sauce caused a national incident. In April 2017, Adult Swim made an unusual decision. They released the Season 3 premiere of Rick and Morty on April 1st, April Fool's Day, without warning. No announcement, no trailer. The episode simply appeared. The episode, The Rick Shank Rick-demption, ended with Rick delivering a characteristic nihilistic rant to Morty about the meaninglessness of existence. In the middle of it, he mentioned that his real motivation, his true North Star, the thing that gets him out of bed, is his desire to track down McDonald's Szechuan dipping sauce, a promotional sauce that had been offered for a limited time in 1998 to coincide with the Disney film Mulan and then discontinued. It was, by every account from the show's creators, a joke. A bit. Roiland simply loved the sauce, and the gag fit the character. Justin Roiland himself later confirmed it would have 0 impact on the show's story going forward. The fanbase did not take it as a joke. McDonald's sent a jug of recreated Szechuan sauce to Roiland and the writer's room. The internet responded with escalating fervor. McDonald's, reading the moment as a marketing opportunity, announced a 1-day promotional return of the sauce at select locations on October 7, 2017. What followed was something the company genuinely had not prepared for. Locations ran out of sauce almost immediately. Police were called to at least 1 restaurant to manage crowds. Fans chanted in parking lots. 1 person reportedly traded their car for a packet of sauce. Dan Harmon publicly stated the show had been robbed by McDonald's mishandling of the event. A throwaway line, a discontinued condiment, a genuine national incident. The writers had spent the entire episode deliberately subverting every expectation the audience had about Rick's backstory, confirming nothing, answering nothing, mocking anyone who expected a revelation. The joke was that nothing in Rick's universe has meaning. The audience turned around and assigned enormous meaning to a dipping sauce. Rick would have found this either hilarious or deeply depressing, probably both simultaneously.
There you are, Morty. Listen to me. I got an errand to run in a whole different dimension.
6. Dan Harmon's writing framework is based on ancient mythology. Dan Harmon is not a casual storyteller. Long before Rick and Morty, he had developed a personal framework for story structure that he called the Story Circle, a condensed, practical adaptation of mythologist Joseph Campbell's hero's journey that Harmon had refined over years of working in television. The framework, which Harmon has discussed publicly and at length, breaks every narrative into 8 steps. A character is in a zone of comfort, wants something, enters an unfamiliar situation, adapts to it, gets what they wanted, pays a heavy price for it, returns to their familiar situation, and is changed by the experience. The circle begins and ends in the same place, but the character is different. What makes this relevant to Rick and Morty specifically is that Harmon applied this framework not just to individual episodes, but to the show's entire moral architecture. Every episode of Rick and Morty in which the emotional content lands, the ones that make you laugh and then catch you off guard with something genuinely affecting, follows this structure underneath the chaos. Morty wants something. Rick enables it in a way that causes damage. The damage reveals something true. The return home is never quite the same as the departure. The show's most praised episodes, The Ricks Must Be Crazy, The ABCs of Beth, Pickle Rick, all follow this framework with enough precision that you can map them onto Harmon's circle beat by beat. The absurdist surface is deliberate. The structural integrity underneath it is equally deliberate. Rick and Morty looks like it's making things up as it goes. It isn't. What looks like chaos has a skeleton built from one of the oldest storytelling frameworks in human history. 5. The writers deliberately protect Rick's backstory. By law, One of the most distinctive things about Rick and Morty as a show is what it refuses to explain. Rick's drinking, Rick's nihilism, the relationship with his daughter, the specific catastrophe that made him what he is. The show gestures toward answers and then retreats, consistently, deliberately, every time. This is not accidental neglect. It is a policy, one that Harmon and Roiland established early and have both spoken about publicly. Harmon explained his reasoning in an interview with the AV Club. The moment you reveal the specific origin of a character's defining trait, you've committed what he called jumping the shark. Not because the revelation itself is bad, but because it makes the character suddenly smaller. You learn that the Fonz didn't always wear a leather jacket. You learn that Rick started drinking when a specific thing happened. And now, instead of a character who contains the mystery of every possible backstory, you have a character whose history is fixed and finite and known. The writers called this principle the law of Rick's backstory, and it functions as a creative constraint across the whole writing staff. Story ideas that require a definitive explanation of why Rick is who he is get turned away. Episodes that gesture toward the backstory, showing fragments, implications, emotional resonances, are acceptable. Confirmation is not. The result is a character who remains genuinely open. After more than a decade of episodes, you still don't definitively know what happened to Rick. And because you don't know, you can't stop wondering. The mystery isn't a gap in the writing. It's the design.
Basically killed us all. Our stomach's a bag of sand. Idiot, Morty, your Rick has
4. The show has more real science in it than most adults learned in school. Rick and Morty does not fake its science. It engages with it, imperfectly, playfully, and sometimes incorrectly, but from a position of genuine interest. At San Diego Comic-Con, Harmon and Roiland sat down with a quantum physicist named Spiros Michalakis and a neuroscientist named Crystal Dilworth for a documented discussion about the show's scientific content. What emerged from that conversation was the confirmation that the writer's room engages seriously with concepts like simulation theory, parallel universes, quantum mechanics, and consciousness in ways that go beyond set decoration. Michalakis noted that several of the show's conceptual gambits were grounded in actual theoretical physics. The show's multiverse, the infinite Ricks and Mortys across infinite realities, is a playful but structurally coherent engagement with the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. The Council of Ricks episode uses that framework not just as science fiction flavor, but as a genuine exploration of what identity means if every possible version of you exists simultaneously. The show also engages with simulation theory, the philosophical proposition that reality as we experience it might itself be a computation running inside a larger reality. It touches on the relationship between free will and determinism in ways that are genuinely philosophically loaded. These aren't surface references. They're the actual conceptual DNA of the stories being told. Harmon described the writers as absolutely fascinated by science, not scientists themselves, but people who find scientific ideas genuinely interesting rather than treating them as backdrop. The result is a cartoon that has arguably introduced more viewers to real theoretical physics than most high school curricula. 3. Season 3 was its own season-long structural experiment. Most viewers experienced Season 3 of Rick and Morty as a collection of strong episodes, funnier and darker than what came before, more willing to be uncomfortable. What most viewers didn't know is that the season was structurally designed as a deliberate experiment in the writer's room itself. Season 3 was the first season of the show to feature a gender-balanced writing staff. Harmon brought this about intentionally, and both he and Roiland later discussed what that shift produced. The practical effect, as Harmon described it, was that nobody in the room was functioning as an ambassador for their gender. When a room is predominantly one gender, the minority writers inevitably end up representing their entire demographic. Every idea they pitch is received as a statement about what women think or men think. When the room is balanced, that dynamic dissolves. People pitch ideas as people, not as representatives. The direct creative consequence was the strongest set of Beth and Summer storylines the show had produced to that point. Characters who had functioned primarily as foils or emotional counterweights in earlier seasons were suddenly getting episodes that explored their inner lives with the same complexity the show had always given Rick and Morty. The ABCs of Beth widely considered one of the finest episodes in the entire series, came from that season and from that room. Season 3 is also the season that confirmed the show could handle genuine emotional devastation. The ending of Rest and Ricklaxation, the conclusion of The ABCs of Beth. Episodes that didn't resolve cleanly, that left the characters in places that were honest rather than comfortable. A different room produced a different show. The experiment worked.
It's possible that your dog became self-aware and made modifications on the cognition amplifier, then turned on your...
2. The show survived losing its lead voice actor. In January 2023, Adult Swim cut ties with Justin Roiland following domestic violence charges and subsequent harassment allegations. Roiland had voiced both Rick and Morty since the show's very first episode. His voice was, by any reasonable measure, the most identifiable sonic element of the entire series. Losing it seemed like an existential threat to a show built around those two characters. The charges were later dropped due to insufficient evidence. But Adult Swim had already made their decision, and the show had to find a way forward. For Season 7, Ian Cardone took over, the voice of Rick, and Harry Belden took over Morty. The identities of the new voice actors were kept secret until the season actually premiered in October 2023. Adult Swim had described the approach as using sound-alikes, voices close enough to the established characters that the transition wouldn't be jarring. The result, judged by critical reception and audience response, was considered largely successful. The new voices were not identical to Roiland's originals, but they were close enough in character that the show's emotional dynamics remained intact. Critics noted that the writing, the structure, and the fundamental relationships between the characters held up in ways that suggested the show was genuinely bigger than any individual performer. The behind-the-scenes reality was more complicated. Harmon and Roiland's creative relationship had been deteriorating for years before the public crisis. According to Harmon's own account, Roiland had stopped showing up to work during Season 3 production. A mediator was brought in. The partnership that had created the show had been fracturing slowly and privately long before it broke publicly and dramatically. Rick and Morty survived. The question the show now faces, whether it can maintain the same emotional depth that came from Harmon and Roiland's specific creative tension, is one only future seasons can answer. 1. The show is actually about meaning in a meaningless universe. And here is the thing that most Rick and Morty discussions circle around without quite landing on directly. On the surface, the show seems to be making a fairly nihilistic argument. Rick is the smartest being in the universe. He has seen everything, understood everything, traveled to the literal edge of reality, and his conclusion, his governing philosophy, the lens through which he processes every experience, is that none of it means anything. The universe is indifferent. Consciousness is an accident. Attachment is weakness. This reading is accurate and incomplete. Because here's what the show actually keeps doing, episode after episode. It tests Rick's nihilism against reality and finds it wanting, not by arguing against it philosophically, by showing what it costs. Rick drinks because the meaninglessness is unbearable. Rick manipulates Morty because he needs him and can't admit it. Rick sabotages every human relationship in his life and then suffers for its absence. The show presents nihilism not as a conclusion, but as a wound, an intellectual position that a brilliant, damaged person has adopted as a defense mechanism against feeling things he doesn't know how to survive feeling. And Morty is the counter-argument. Not because Morty has answers, he doesn't. Morty is anxious, frequently wrong, often useless, but Morty keeps caring. About Summer, about his parents, about the people on the planets they land on. Morty keeps assigning meaning even in a universe that offers none officially. He keeps deciding that things matter even when Rick is standing next to him, explaining why they don't. The show's structure, an infinite multiverse in which every version of Rick and Morty exists, is itself an argument. If there are infinite realities, this one is arbitrary, and yet these specific characters, in this specific family, in this specific version of the universe, keep choosing each other, keep showing up, keep going on one more adventure together. Harmon has described the show as a cross between The Simpsons and Futurama, balancing family drama with heavy science fiction. But the emotional truth underneath all of it is something closer to existentialism. The show keeps asking, what do you do when the universe gives you no reason to care about anything, and you find yourself caring anyway? Rick doesn't have a good answer. He never has. That's why people keep watching. Because neither do we. 12 hidden details, one show that keeps refusing to be simple. Here's what I want to know, and I think this is genuinely worth arguing about in the comments. Do you think Rick and Morty without Justin Roiland's original voice can maintain what made the show special? Or is something fundamental already gone? There is no correct answer, and I'm curious where you land. Subscribe if you want more of this. The real stories behind the shows that shaped modern culture will be here.